Thanks so much, Kavya. Just as the Indian economy seems to be getting out of the woods, it's time to think about the post COVID world. And for India to do well, manufacturing has to do well. But like all things Indian, there are a lot of ifs. We have with us today Mr. Vikram Kirloskar, Chairman and MD Kirloskar Systems and Vice Chairman Toyota Kirloskar Motors to discuss and debate the ifs and also what it will take to change the orbit. Welcome to the summit, Vikram.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think a good way to start this conversation would be to examine the impact of COVID-19 on manufacturing. Every crisis, if you see, puts a spotlight on the weaknesses of a system, of a company, or it could also be economy. For Indian manufacturing, what worked and what didn't?
Let me tell you, I was president of CII when this started. I finished my term in June this year. But when I was really scared when this started, and in our first meetings with the government and the Prime Minister, we said that you must do a lockdown because we were worried that without a lockdown, nothing will happen. We supported a strong lockdown. And we said, first, help the people at the bottom of the pyramid everywhere. We did not ask for industry help. We said we'll ask for industry help subsequently. Anyway, I was really worried what will happen to industry. I was really worried what will happen to small scale, medium scale industry. And now that I look back, couple of things, the positives and the negatives. The negatives people know. I think the biggest negative in the whole issue was we missed out some of the migrant labor issue that got sorted out very quickly though. But the best part was I think we were scared about logistics across the country. And if you realize the way we all work together, private sector, public sector, and the government, we could manage the logistics of essential services, essential commodities in a very, very fine manner. And the government had changed its speed of working to untie knots across the country very fast and very fast communication. So COVID forced a change not only in the private sector. I think it forced a change in the way government also started working. So I'm now going to look at a little bit of the positive things of COVID. I think the hardest hit has been, of course, the service sector, the hotels, the airlines, where you could not, the lockdowns are still continuing in some areas, and it's difficult to visit these places. And that's a tough one. It's hard to find any words to say anything or do things about it. But I think in manufacturing, things have started picking up. As the lockdown started opening up, June, July, August, and especially you started seeing the difference from July onwards, it has picked up. And I think it's picked up better than before. But more interestingly, I think if you look at the results of companies, first quarter, second quarter, and compare it with the old results, yeah, the revenues are down, but if you look at the margins, they've all been increasing. And they have changed their method of doing business. They've changed their business model to cope up with, work from home, lower travel, improve productivity, and all various kinds of innovative ideas to make it a more competitive business model. I think that's one of the biggest positive things that is coming out of it. I know in all my companies, everywhere our margins have increased because our costs have come down. A big challenge is, as we get out of COVID, how do we maintain that same kind of cost competitiveness level so we can be globally competitive?
But are you less worried now, given that COVID is continuing?
See, I think the recovery, to my mind, is better than what I expected, very frankly. I see first we thought only the holiday season is causing demand and some pent-up demand, but we are still seeing a sustained demand in cars. Three-wheelers is a little difficult. Two-wheelers is fantastic. Even commercial vehicles have started picking up. And if you see something like the steel industry, there's almost like shortage of steel right now. They're doing phenomenally well. It's the lowest price of coal anytime in the past so many years. People with blast furnaces are doing extremely well. Steel exports are superb. Everyone is running at full out. You won't have thought of this a few months back. I think I wouldn't have imagined it for sure. So I think the recovery is moving very fast. In some ways, we were criticizing the government, saying, is the help that you're providing too little? But I think they spread it out well. And in hindsight, I would say conserving the money was a good idea, and giving it in doses.
The government will have to do a lot more, especially for manufacturing. So, and if we have seen the economic reforms in manufacturing, the Make in India was a good announcement, a lot of good schemes, but it didn't really work out. For the next phase of reforms, what does the government need to do, especially after they've announced the Atmanirbhar scheme also?
See, let me talk a little bit about automotive industry, because anyway,
Sure.
automotive industry accounts for probably the largest part of manufacturing. I believe the automotive industry is very competitive because you have the numbers there. There's data from the last 15, 20 years to show you that on quality, cost, and delivery, the automotive industry and the auto component industry has done pretty well. We are one of the largest exporters of vehicles around the world and a large exporter of components as well. So it's especially steel and cast iron and metal-based parts. We've done extremely well. I have seen the cost structure of assemblies like transmissions and engines made in India, in Bangalore, in our plants versus other plants in Asia as well as Japan or Europe and the US. And we are very competitive. Ex-factory, we are very competitive. Where we are having trouble and where we are losing out a bit is on logistics and transaction costs. Okay, and the time of logistics, time of transaction costs. That's where we are suffering a few percent, 4-5% of cost competitiveness issue. But I think people are recognizing it, and there's a lot of activity going on how to recover it. I believe this Make in India. For me, Make in India is important. All my life, since I came back from college from MIT, I've been only doing Make in India, and that's always been my mantra. Even when we are manufacturing cars in Toyota Kirloskar Motors from India, it's not just localization of parts; we are localizing as much of the capital equipment as possible. So we are always on that. We localize steel, etc. I think we are competitive. I think the PLI scheme that is coming out is going to add another big step to this. People realize the market is not only India. The manufacturing people do realize it's outside India. It's a difference in the logistic cost, transaction cost. Some of the transaction costs are related to ease of doing business. And I think all the states are aware of it. You can see the competition now even more between the states to reduce these logistic costs.
Sure. One of the things that has come out, a big theme in the last few days, is basically the whole reconfiguration of the global supply chains as well. People are trying to diversify in terms of footprints and also locations. And we see countries like Bangladesh, Vietnam, Cambodia doing really well. For India to get its fair share, what are the few points that we need to put in place apart from the regulations?
See, what is surprise? You mentioned Bangladesh. I manufacture textile machinery and I export textile machinery to Bangladesh. It's a big market for us. Okay, so they're buying textile machinery from India. They're buying, and a lot of other people also export machinery to Bangladesh from India. And I think they're buying cotton from India. They're buying yarn from India, and they're becoming a big exporter of finished garments. So they're obviously doing something very well on their logistic and transaction costs, and trying to make their workforce in garment making extremely productive and easy to work with. I think we have to go on the same basis. We have to look at each of our big value chains. Okay, instead of supply chain, I rather call it a value chain. That is from raw material to the finished product. Okay, and compare our value chains. If I look at automotive or component industry or a textile industry or pharma or chemical. Some areas we are very competitive, like pharma. But look at some of the other value chains, making a bulldozer or something in other similar in manufacturing, and compare the value chains and see where we lose out. You'll find that in the factories we are competitive. We have to figure out how to get the transaction and logistic costs very competitive. And finally, a buyer, it's not just cost, it is quality and delivery, which also matters. Reliability of delivery. Reliability that you are, if you're going to be delivering every day in the present system of just in time around the world, you need to deliver every day or deliver every hour or deliver every 3 days. You have to be committed to those points. You can't say, oh, sorry, today I'm 1 hour late and three hours early and that kind of stuff. I think that kind of commitment it requires building of confidence between the customer and the buyer, the customer and the seller and the supplier. And this confidence and trust has to be developed. And I think that's where we need to work hard on. Our auto component companies, we have some of the largest number of Deming Prize winners in quality in the world now. But we have to develop this mutual trust and benefit and confidence that commitments on supply, delivery, and this keeping this mutual trust intact is going to go, and it'll keep improving. And I think that's something it comes out of experience and out of time.
You worked with the Japanese partner for so long. You also have insight into how Japanese think. Do you think the Japanese companies will be open to sourcing more from India, setting up more manufacturing bases in India?
I think they will come and manufacture more here. See, my partner, Toyota Motor, has factories in 57 countries. They have factories almost everywhere they sell. So what we end up looking at opportunities for export is maybe a global volume of a particular assembly, like an engine or a gearbox, which we can sell to 5-6 different countries where they don't have these particular manufacturing plants, or they're manufacturing something of a different size. So that's the way it's working for me. And we have been successful in that, in exporting engines and gearboxes around the world. And I think that will increase further because we are competitive in that field. On fully finished vehicles, for me, it's again a little bit of each country situation where Toyota has its distributorships and its factories, how the whole politics or the plan of that works. But I think for many, especially Indian companies, two-wheelers and three-wheelers especially, they're selling all over the world. And I think that will only increase as we go along.
One of the things that we were discussing in the morning was basically the productivity problem that the Indian manufacturing sector has. I mean, how do we deal with it? Do we invest more in manufacturing, in automation? Do we invest more in upskilling? I mean, change manufacturing process. How do we make sure that we can take Indian companies to the next level? I mean, there are a set of companies which have done exceedingly well, but it's a very small set. How do we make sure that the change is perlocates down to a lot of people?
I believe it's skill and mindset. Okay, is a main thing. We have I want to give an example. Talk a little bit about this. We have a ITI in our factory. It's a boarding ITI. We take 62 very poor students every year, and it's for 3 years. But if you look at the program in the school, it's 40% is skill development, 60% is mind and body development. Okay, that's how the scheduling is done. So it's important not only to develop the skill. It's important to in a factory, you're making one part and giving it to the next process. It is important that the one person who's giving it to the next process, between them there is a mutual trust relationship where he's confident that what I'm giving him is of top quality and I will not give him a bad part. and he will take whatever I give him. And that's if a chain to build up that productivity in a factory, mutual trust within the factory, okay, of skill and the fact that I will not do something bad, pay attention to detail and not do bad, is the single most source, I believe, to improve productivity. So we have to do, along with skill development, we have to do mind and body development as well. And I believe this is very, very important. Of course, there's machinery, technology, industrial automation, number 4, and all those things are going to happen. But without this basic, what I'm saying is it's the human involvement in manufacturing. You cannot reach global levels.
Sure. I mean, I was looking at the A.T. Kearney report. It said two things, basically, that the level of innovation in Indian companies is low. And second, the agility to move up and down is also not very, it's also something that's not very well practiced in the Indian manufacturing system. These are two very important things if you want to be competitive. How do we deal with this?
See, again, let me go back to some data which I have. When we started production in TKM, maybe 20, 24 years, more than 20 years ago, Toyota has a system of rating plants around the world. And basically, the basic rating is on quality, where we have an auditor who comes without announcement and does a shipping quality audit, takes a random car at the end of the line or in the yard and does an audit of it. So shipping quality audit is something where you don't know who's going to come, who's going to audit it, and those numbers are compared around the world. When we started, we were at the bottom of the pyramid, and now we are amongst the top 1 or 2 plants in the world. And the reason for that has been retraining of workmen all the way through. If I look at the improvement in shipping quality audit, it is directly correlated to hours of retraining and skill development. So I can't emphasize enough. If you want to get innovation, you have to teach people how to think and how to build up their skills. Only skill will give you the innovation. You need to know how to do things, how things work. You need to learn techniques of problem solving. You need to understand what is a Pareto analysis. You need to understand all these things. And you need to learn, besides just the physical skills, what goes behind in problem solving to develop innovation. So I think teaching and skill development is frankly the only solution to a lot of this.
We've discussed what happens in a company, but a lot of Indian problems actually in manufacturing start when you reach out to the suppliers. That's where bottlenecks in manufacturing, bottlenecks in process management, bottlenecks in skills. And that is where a lot of time also, which these are the factors which inhibit the competitive of the sector overall. How do we make sure we have a program in place that perlocate down to all the smaller and companies also? Is it the larger companies which have to bear the burden, or should government get in this? Or people like CII?
I think if we talk of supply chain, value chain, for a supply chain from raw material to end customer to work smoothly, there has to be partnership all along. And obviously the big guy in the chain, the car company, the original equipment manufacturer, the car assembly unit, has to be the owner of it. And it's his job to make sure he treats the rest of the supply chain as a partner. Now, this is not only true in the car industry, it's probably true in all other industries. And if you see the best run companies in India, whether it's in food processing or whether it's in cars or whether it's in chemicals or anything else, if you see the best run companies, they're the ones who treat their business associates as partners. They're with them thick and thin. They work in training them. They work in bringing them up. They make sure they're paid in time. All these things happen. So partnership in the supply chain, I think, is vital. And it is the responsibility of the big boy in the supply chain to do it.
Sure. One of the most important things which is being discussed in manufacturing across the world is basically this whole concept of sustainability and how to incorporate it within in every company. I mean, we live in times of extreme climate change and global warming. What I see is that it has become a kind of a catchphrase to talk about sustainability. How do we make sure that people actually adopt it so that going forward even customers are going to ask for sustainability, and they're going to look for products which come from sustainable companies.
Okay, I'll if you don't mind, I'll just tell you what all I have done on sustainability in the last 6 years, 8 years.
Please.
Toyota put a goal of 2050 of zero carbon, completely zero carbon within their manufacturing products, everything. And that depends with something related to products, that they go to zero carbon products, then zero carbon manufacturing, zero water, a recyclable economy, a circular economy, all these things. For us, a lot of the products that we manufacture are still not designed by us. They're coming from Toyota. But I know in the next few years, we'll be our emission levels are amongst the lowest available, and we will be getting lower and lower and lower in that. But in manufacturing, we have done a lot of work, and we've become one of the greenest factories in the Toyota system. We are on more than 95% renewable power. Most days it will be 100%. We have stopped using public water supply, even though we use we have water-based painting. There was a Kaveri water pipeline put for us. We stopped using Kaveri water. We do 100% recycling and rainwater harvesting. In terms of energy usage, we are one of the lowest per car. We watch we have zero effluents. We watch all our volatile compounds evaporation. So we've started doing a lot of this. And the way we've done it is actually, it's not from some mega investment. Renewable power, you could say, is a mega investment. But the rest of it has come out of using the same Toyota Kaizen method, that is continuous improvement method, by teaching all our team members the effect of carbon in their future. And it is this whole environment we'll end up being, the amount of trees and all that we plant, we are trying to be zero net carbon company in the next couple of years. We will be. We are almost there. And it is out of ideas from every team member now. So we've first educated them on the effect of carbon in their future. Sure. And what it means to them. That is important. If you tell someone, reduce your water, do this, without telling what the future effect of it is or teaching him, it's difficult. So I believe, and the economic benefit, all our investments in environmental, all these environmental challenges and improving our thing has been actually a return of less than a year in every investment. It has been a major saving in cost for us. So I think there's economic benefit in looking after the environment, besides a personal benefit, a satisfaction benefit. So I think we have to try every way. It's a mindset change that you have to do. I think we've done about 5,000 children till now, till the COVID came in. But we have a 15 or 20 acre park we have developed, green park, where we teach kids about the environment. And we bring in people for a full day, children of local schools, and we spend time with them on what is the circular economy, how do you look after the environment. I think you have to teach from basics to get this environment issue sorted out.
Sure. Thank you so much. I think we've run out of time. The two big takeaways that I take from this conversation are incremental change. We need to do one thing at a time and keep doing it. And second is the mindset change. Thank you. Thank you so much. Pleasure speaking with you. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.